If you don't have habits or at least some sort of framework or budget or goal for what you want to do with your money, then you're just gonna see it kind of disappear before you know it.
Welcome to episode 5 of the Potentially Successful podcast. I'm your host, Jeff James, and this is my co-host, Baxter Robb. We're on a journey of pursuing financial freedom. We're learning a lot. We're making a ton of mistakes, but we're so glad you're here with us.
Yeah, the world of personal finance can seem really overwhelming. It's huge. There's things from investing to real estate to stocks to all kinds of things. And we may not know your exact situation, and you may be working on trying to figure out how do you invest, how do you buy a home, but some of you may be trying to figure out, how do I make the money from this first paycheck last till I get paid again? It can't cover all of my expenses, and it's you could be anywhere.
Yeah, that was exactly me. Just 5-6 years ago, I just got a new job making $10 an hour, and I just found myself in that exact same situation where I realized I don't think I understood that concept of what paycheck to paycheck actually meant. And what I realized, the definition of it is, if I have to wait for my next paycheck to make a financial decision, like paying something off, buying something, purchasing, a meal or whatever, that means I am living paycheck to paycheck, meaning the timing of my paycheck defines my spending schedule. Yeah. Right. And so 5 or 6 years ago, I found myself in that position, and I, very quickly decided, like, okay, this is something I need to figure out, something I need to work my way out of. And I did a ton of research online trying to figure out, okay, how do you manage your money, or how do you increase more, increase your savings or whatever. And I think budgeting is what I landed on. And I know budgeting sounds like, as soon as I said that word, you might want to click away, but it truly is it's the strategy that helped me manage my money and get me to, living a little bit more comfortably today, not necessarily extravagantly, but living in a place where the money I made, months ago is what I'm spending today, not the money I made just last week.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was in a similar boat of living paycheck to paycheck and having to figure out, how do I make the money I just received cover the expenses for these next week? And sometimes it didn't make it all the way, and I had to pull out the credit card and pay for stuff that way. And then it's like, you have to pay the credit card off at some point. If you're not paying attention to that can rack up, and your credit card debt can skyrocket. And so I totally get that. For me, a lot of times I was thinking, if I could just make more money, I could get out of the place that I'm in now. Yeah. If I could, let's say I was making $25,000 a year, if I could just make $50,000, I could keep spending what I'm spending now and then save the additional $25,000 and then actually start to build saving, because I knew saving was important. That was something I learned from an early age. My dad was talking to me about saving a lot, but when you actually have to do it and you actually have lots of expenses, saving can seem impossible. And for me, I just thought of it like, okay, if I can just make more money, that's going to be the solution to my problem.
It's interesting because that's, I had the same exact mindset. Like, I didn't immediately go to budgeting as my solution. That's what I ended up on. But my first thought was the same thing, man, how can I make more money? What other jobs could I be doing? And at that job that I'm, where I was at 6 years ago, I decided to take on the janitorial role that had just, like, they wanted to bring it in-house and they offered it to employees. And I was like, I'll do that. Like, I'll stay after work or come early and I'll clean the offices because it meant an extra so much every year. Right. And I just decided, like, that was me trying to not solve my money with any strategy, solve my money problem with any strategy or any putting any work or, wisdom into it. Yeah. It was just, I need to make more money. So I'm going to go trade more of my hours for more money. Yeah. And it's funny because that solution is like I said, it doesn't take any strategy. It doesn't take any effort in terms of like being wise with your money. It's really just like, I need more so that I don't have to think about it. It's just, I can go on with my spending, go on with my I can put my money wherever I want and not have to think about it because there should be enough of a cushion, right? So it's really a lazy mindset in the sense that I don't want to have to think about this extensively. So I'm just kind of,
well, you're not really
like stiff arming my money a little bit, right?
You're not really addressing the problem, right? Like you're saying, like you just said, you're just kind of, I just need to increase that cushion. But in researching for this episode of the podcast, I came across this statistic. I want to read it to you. It says 69% of Americans have less than $1,000 saved. Whew. And I mean, that was me just a couple of years ago. And I'm not trying to downplay if that's you and you're in that scenario. I feel for you. Holly and I, we had a medical bill come up a few weeks ago that was like $1,200 or $1,300. And if that would have been me a few years ago, I wouldn't have been able to pay it. I would have to put it on a credit card, maybe ask my parents for money, or like nobody wants to do that. And so, to me, that statistic shows it's not an income problem; it's a spending problem. So, regardless of how much money I can make, if I don't have my spending under control, then I'm going to continue to spend whatever I make and maybe even more and continue to go into debt. And so, that statistic just like blew my mind, and I really resonated with me because I've been there. I understand what that's like.
Yeah. I mean, that phrase is awesome. It's not an income problem. It's a spending problem because it makes you think about the problem. It solidifies the fact that the problem exists on all levels, right? It's not just, hey, this is a problem only for people who are in this tax bracket or people who make this much money. It's a problem on every level of the financial spectrum, right? So it's like, no matter how much money you make, if you have a spending problem, you will always spend more than you make, right? And the problem is it's only exacerbated when you make more.
Sure.
And that's true because, I mean, naturally, right? If you make more money, what do you look like to a bank? What do you look like to a creditor?
Yeah.
You're like, they have deeper pockets that I can give them even bigger loans that will take them longer to pay off because they have more potential collateral of their, of their income, right? And yeah, it's like if you have that problem on a small scale, you will definitely have that problem on a large scale.
Yeah, and I think we see that too. A couple of other things that stood out when I was doing a little bit of research was a study done in 2018 said that 70% of lottery winners went broke within just a few years. And they cited a few things of they quit, people quit their jobs if you win the lottery or they gave away too much. But I would say it's probably a combination of those things. And those things aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves, but I would say it's that spending problem. If you don't have habits or at least some sort of framework or budget or goal for what you want to do with your money, then you're just gonna see it kind of disappear before you know it. And the same thing is true for athletes, right? Kind of on some of the highest earners in our country make millions of dollars every year. I think it's 60 to 70% or more of NBA and NFL players go broke after retirement at some point. And it's like it's not the income. It's you could make $10 million a year, but if you spend $10 million a year, you're not really getting anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. The lottery piece that you said, it makes me think. It's like, okay, does budgeting mean that I can't be generous? Does budgeting mean that I can't give away more and more? Like if I want to do, isn't that good? Aren't I doing good with my money? Like,
yeah. I would say, I think budgeting, and this was me. I think for a long time, I did like a halfway budget for a while, and for me, I was focused on just kind of, I wanted to be able to go with the flow. I wanted to be able to kind of spend my money how I wanted, have enough money left over so I could save and make some decisions. But budgeting seemed restrictive. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at in the sense of, are you saying that, no, I can't give money away or that I can't do these things? And it's actually the opposite. It's that budgeting and having a plan and a really just a goal for what you're doing, a method in which you're going to manage your money, that gives you the freedom to do what you want with the money and to actually achieve the goals or to buy the things that you may want in life.
Yeah. And it also, I've seen it like, it helps multiply your goals or helps boost your goals, right? So like, say you like, I want to be able to give, X amount of money. It's like, what if you actually have more wiggle room to give away more money, but you just aren't even looking at your finances, your budget to such a level where you could identify that extra $5, $10, $50, $100 a month that you could be giving away, being more generous, whether that's, a homeless fund, right? Say, I don't know where you stand on this, but it's like, if you had $100 a month and in your budget, you said, this is my homeless fund. If someone walks up to me asking for money, I'm just going to give them $5 and you have $100 every month to do that. I promise you that is probably more money and more generous doing that in your budget than if you did it without a budget, because you probably, if you gave away $5, every time, you'd probably be like, "Ooh, I'm probably giving too much. I need to step back on this." Right? It's actually more freedom when you can consistently put a number on a line item on a budget and say, "Hey, this is what I have to be able to spend here," so I don't have to think. I only have to think about it once, right? I think about it once when I set that budget line item, and I can give freely, and then just check in on my budget and see if I've reached that cap, and if I've hit $100, I'm like, hey, I've hit my cap for this month, but next month I'll get right back on it. And that doesn't mean you're not being generous. It's just you're just sticking to your budget, and actually it's helping you become more consistently generous every month, right?
I like that in the sense of, really, a budget is just a plan for how you're going to spend the money that you earn. Yeah. And it can be as loose or as rigid as you want, whatever makes the most sense for you as an individual. Like we said, we don't know everybody's situation, and different seasons of life may call for different kind of money management strategies, but having some plan is the key. Yeah. Like Jeff, you were just saying, if you don't have any plan, it feels like the unknown is so much more scary than a known expense, right? I mentioned that Holly and I had a big expense, or big medical expense a few weeks ago, and we knew that expense was coming. We didn't know exactly how much it would be, but we started planning for it, and it was actually twice what I thought it was going to be. Wow. So that was a little bit of a shock, but I knew it was coming, and I knew we had a plan for it. But like I said, a few years ago, if that would have been me, the fact that it was unknown for what might come or what might happen, that just stressed me out all the time. Yeah. And so I think that's the difference, is you're starting to move those things, the fundamentals of money, into the unknown, this big scary world of personal finance, into the known, where you can say, hey, I can feel confident in the small steps that I'm taking, regardless of how small they may be.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, Joe and I, we're just coming out of the great Texas freeze of 2021, and we had a pipe burst, and we had to get that fixed. And because, the plumbing company had to come out in the snow, they charged me $350 to fix and replace a small pipe. And I know they way overcharged me, so that's a whole nother topic of discussion. But again, way more than I would have planned for that expense. But again, if this was 5 or 6 years ago, would not have been able to handle that, and would have had to put that on a credit card or something, and float that balance until I had that that money to pay that credit card off. But again, it's with that plan, having a home maintenance type of line item, or not even having that, but having other line items that are more discretionary, more free-form money that can move that 350 from, to say, okay, maybe we're not going to do X, Y, or Z this month because we have to fix a broken pipe, and that's just how life is, right?
Yes, I want to break it down a little bit, Jeff. What would you say are the benefits to budgeting? Like, why should somebody start budgeting if they don't have a budget already?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. I can think of 3 things off the top of my head. I would say the first is peace of mind, right? I think the the myth about budgeting here that's often believed is that, hey, if I don't have to, or the more I jump into my finances, the more complicated it's going to get, the more scary, more, just basically it's just this large unknown that they're like, if I get into that, it's just going to be too much, right? And I think that's the myth, right? The only way to simplify complexity is to jump in, right? It's to jump in and start defining it, right? So a budget, that's exactly what it does. It takes what you have and what you don't have, and it puts it all on one piece of paper, basically, and it says, hey, this is where you're at. It identifies the problem, and it gives you a path towards the solution.
Yeah, I like that. Like you said, it defines what it is. Like I think most people would be able to list some of their expenses. You know, some might be able to list almost all of them, but probably not able to list what you spend every single month on those expenses, because some of them change, or keeping track of 20, 30, 40, 50 expenses, like you said, can be really complex, or it feels really complex when you're trying to do it in your head.
Yeah.
And like, that's what I've done in the past of like, okay, I know I have rent. Okay. I know I have to pay for a car. I have gas. I have food. Okay. I have two types of food: groceries, eating out, like shampoo, like all these things. You just like, it starts to be, I mean, just all the stuff that you need.
I have a category for shampoo.
Hey,
on my
whatever it takes to quantify it. But I think that's the point, right? Is if you don't know, or you don't have a method, is it's gonna feel scary. And it feels complex until you get there. Yeah. But once you start defining it, you really do find that peace of mind.
Yeah. I mean, I spent, I think, 2 years trying to convince you to get out of the go with the flow budget, and like, you know, the mental math that you were doing, and actually get on a budget. Yeah. And I'm thankful you've finally come to the
finally listen to you.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Look, the second thing I would say a budget provides for you is freedom. A myth in this case about budgeting that most people believe is that a budget is super restrictive, right? It means, man, like if I have a budget, that means I can't go out to eat as much, or I can't do X, Y, and Z. I can't do this favorite hobby of mine. It's like, who's telling you that? Like, you're setting up the budget, right? If you want a category for candy, hey, you do that. If you want a category for video games, you're welcome to do that. Like, literally, you are the one deciding.
Or shampoo, right?
Yeah, or shampoo, exactly. If you are the one deciding what's important to you, what's worth actually spending money towards, and then putting your money there, right? Putting your money in that category to either save for it or, you know, spend towards it. And it's totally your thing, right? Yeah. And if you have a spouse, obviously it's y'all's thing. You have to work together on that. So you have to come aligned there, and there's many different strategies to kind of do that. But at the end of the day, it's something that you are deciding. And so actually it's like your own little kingdom, right? It's like, if anything, you have the most freedom, right? You have the most control if you put it to paper, put it on a budget, so that you can decide how you want to spend your money. Yeah.
The freedom piece, I think, is huge. You mentioned like it took you a long time to convince me to budget. And I think freedom was a little bit of that. I think the myth I believed was budgeting is really hard and it takes a lot of time. Like, I knew generally where my expenses were going. I was even able to save some money and make some investments. So I felt like I was doing okay, but I was believing that, oh, this is really restrictive, or it's really time consuming, when if you build it into kind of your regular rhythm, or you do it frequently, it's pretty easy, and it's really freeing because you know where your expenses are going. It's not the unknown, like we've mentioned. You have an idea of what's coming up, and you can spend that little time touching base there, and that gives you freedom, rather than when something unknown pops up, or something that you probably should have known pops up. Then you have to spend a lot of time figuring out, and a lot of stress figuring out how do I deal with this. And so I think that was the difference for me, the freedom piece of it's not as time consuming. It might be a few minutes a day, or maybe 30 minutes a week or something like that, and it really gives you that peace of mind and that freedom that you mentioned.
That's great. The third thing that I think a budget gives you is progress, or a path to progress. And you might ask what I mean by that. If you don't have any intentionality towards your finances, you are going to stay the same or get worse, right? Your situation will stay the same or get worse. Something doesn't progress without action towards it, right? You don't make progress without cultivating that skill, that, your investments, your wisdom when it comes to spending money, saving money, that kind of thing. That doesn't come naturally to anybody. And it's especially so that even if you are just naturally inclined to be a little bit more frugal, it's like life still happens, right? There's all these unexpected expenses that are going to beat you down over time if you don't have a strategy, don't have a path towards progress, right? How do I, have this $1,200 medical expense or this $350 plumbing expense? Okay, that happened this time. What's my path to progress? Okay, what if I start saving for a miscellaneous plumbing category right now, right? So every month I just put $10 in, or $10, $15, $20 in, that means by the time I have another plumbing expense, I have at least a piece of that already saved for. So it's way less of a hit, right? So that idea of a path to progress, what I mean by that is the budget itself, it helps you identify your current habits, the good ones and the bad, right? And naturally, as soon as you identify the bad habits, you being aware of that is enough to slowly start, making you kind of think about, okay, how do I get better at this? How do I, there were months where I spent over $1,000 on eating out because I ate out every single meal because when I was single, it was just easier to do that, right? It was just like,
it's convenient.
Yeah, just convenient. Like go out to lunch with my coworkers and then on the way home or at dinner time, just go pick something up, right? And it's like $1,000, like that's just so crazy. And then if you and your spouse are doing that, like I remember a friend specifically telling me that him and his wife spent over $2,000 doing that because they did the same thing. Because both of them they worked a lot, they didn't want to cook, and they just spent that much. And it's like that's crazy. But as soon as you see it, and you see it consistently, you're like, okay, I got to change this. What if I had an extra $700 a month? That'd be amazing. Right. And you don't see that unless it's on paper in front of you where you can actually be a little analytical about it and say, okay, that's a problem. What's my path to progress? No,
I mean, that's really good. I think it kind of takes us back to what we were talking about in the beginning of it's for most people, I think it's a spending problem. It's not an income problem, right? You just talked about progress. If all you're doing is increasing your income, you're not really making any progress in terms of your expenses. And that's the number one thing that you can control. You can increase your income. You can go get a different job or a promotion or something like that. But if you don't have those expenses in control, they're just going to follow that income, and they're going to ride. If you go from $50,000 a year to $100,000 a year, if you were spending $50,000 before you got that raise, you're probably going to spend $100,000. That's called lifestyle creep. And it just creeps with it, and it happens because of convenience, because you have more access to debt, like you mentioned before, because things are easy. You have a little bit more money than you did before. You're like, okay, now I can get some of these things that I want, or I don't have to worry about spending $2,000 eating out because I make more money now. Oh, I can go get a nicer car. I can get a bigger house, which none of those things are bad in and of itself. But if you don't have a method for tracking it, you're not going to know. And then you're going to wake up maybe a year later and go, I'm right back where I was okay, I need to go make $200,000 now, and that's still not going to be the solution to your problem.
100%. I remember when I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when I learned about the concept of lifestyle creep. And I think I would preach to Baxter about this, like just tell him all the time, like, dude, don't, it's all about lifestyle creep.
Yeah.
Like, if you can make more money and keep living the same, college dorm room lifestyle where your expenses are so low, like that's the goal, right? But then, 3 years later, I found myself spending way more than I used to in the past, and I 100% fell into the lifestyle creep trap. Like what was it? Basically, every time I had a problem that I defined in my life, the smallest problem, like I always have to plug my laptop in here, but then also at work. So I'm like, oh, let me just buy an extra charger, right? Simple solution, great. I don't like getting out of bed to turn off the lights, so I got smart lights, right? So I think Baxter, he used to make fun of me because he would see packages come in at the office for me, multiple every week, because I would just buy stuff on Amazon all the time to solve these little problems that, like, were they necessary? No. Did they make my life a little bit easier? Yes. Is it worth all the extra money that I spent on that stuff? Probably not.
But if it was to you, then that's fine. But I think during that period was probably when you budgeted the least, right? I think, we talked about it, you're like, yeah, I just wasn't keeping up with it consistently. And I was doing a few things, but I wasn't tracking all of my expenses. So I didn't know how much I was actually spending on all of those extra things. And that's what the budget gives you, it gives you a plan and a framework for this is where the money that I'm working really hard working really hard to earn is going. And that's really the key.
Yeah. I mean, I'm literal proof, right? I fell into the trap. I preached the budget for so long, and I got good at it, and I got more comfortable with my money, made more money, saved more money, and then got comfortable with lifestyle creep. Yeah. And I stepped away from my budget a little bit because I was like, oh, I have enough money, so it should be fine. Yeah. And then I started spending more and more and more, and got to the point where I was like, why isn't my savings growing? You know what I mean? Like I had a decent, emergency fund, but outside of that, my savings wasn't growing. And I was like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah. Where's my money going?
Yeah, seriously. We were spending so much to the point where my wife and we had to do a spending reset in January 2021. We decided, okay, we are solving all of our problems by just purchasing solutions. And we need to get out of this mindset and, have some effort towards, living a more frugal life or like kind of rewiring our brain. So in January we did a no spend month, and the challenge was outside of essentials and groceries, don't spend anything, right? And we were, I would say 97% successful. Yeah. And that was like amazing because now we have this mindset of like, it's almost like a game to not spend, right? How do I find a solution that I don't have to pay for? How do I, haggle a bit? How do I find coupons? How do I find, just how do I not spend as much anymore, right? And that's just been really helpful.
Yeah. No, I like that in the sense that it was the budget that allowed you to see that, right? You talked about the overspending, you were buying things for maybe stuff you didn't need, but it was something that you wanted, but the budget is what helped identify that. You talked about it helps identify the areas that you're strong in and the areas that you're weak in, and you guys identified a weakness and started attacking it. But without a budget, you probably wouldn't have identified it at all.
Yeah, exactly. Or the budget itself was the tool that we used to get back on track. It was those months away from not doing a budget that we just got too comfortable with lifestyle creep, got too comfortable with spending money, and then we used the budget to say, okay, what are our actual financial goals with the income coming in, and how do we make action towards it?
Yeah. I want to kind of break down for the listeners, how can you kind of start going about budgeting? I would say similar to our goal setting series, it starts with why. It starts with a direction that you want to head. It starts with something that you want, you have to have a goal in mind. Otherwise that's when budgeting, I think, feels tough and lame, is you're just like, I'm tracking my expenses and I can't spend anything and I can't ever do anything. I can't do the things that I want. So without the vision behind it, without saying, here's what I want, it could be anything. It could be, you mentioned candy, but it could be video games. It could be a car. It could be a house. It could be saving for retirement. It could be really anything that you want. And that's what it's up to you. And so, but without that direction and the destination that you're headed, you're really not going to keep on it. And it's going to be hard to want to manage the money that way.
Yeah. One way my wife and I have fun with the budget is we have this category or this group called the Wish Farm. And it's something we learned from the budgeting tool that we have. They have like little articles and stuff like that. But the Wish Farm is like, it has 3 sections: small, medium, and large. And you get to define what small, medium, and large means to you, right? That could be $5, $50, and $100. That could be $100, $250, and $1,000. It could be whatever you want. But it has 3 sections or 3 slots basically, and you have a list, your wish list. And as you want things, you just add things to the wish list. That's your backlog. That's your that's your like. You just throw things on there, and then at any given time, you can have 1 small, 1 medium, and 1 large in the Wish Farm. And what that does is you are basically growing or what is it, like harvesting or cultivating, right? Cultivating those wishes on the farm so that they grow. So when you're saving towards all the or allocating money for your bills, and then saving money towards your like adult expenses, right? Like your mortgage and all this stuff. You can also have a little bit of fun and say, I'm saving money towards that new computer that I want. I'm saving that money towards that new gadget. Like for me, it's a lot of gadgets. It's a lot of like smart home automation stuff. For Joe, she wants a new camera, right? That's a pretty large expense. So we're not just going to buy it out of nowhere, but we have a, $2,500 large item on our Wish Farm now. And it's fun to see that money just kind of grow incrementally because a camera's on the other end of it. Right. And that's really fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just nice that, we get to define what we want. Right. Yeah. And the budget itself is the tool saying, out of all the chaos going on in your personal finance world, you are making strides towards your, like I said, your adult expenses and the fun stuff and the stuff that you're kind of like, oh, this would make my life more fun, I would be more happy in this way. It would, help my hobby in this way, whatever.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. In terms of that same question, how do you budget? I think the concept I would want to share with y'all, that's probably most helpful that's been most helpful for me, is an old school style of budgeting called the envelope method. And so just picture this, right? You kind of define all your categories that you need to allocate money toward for a month, right? And you have, say, let's just take a random number. Let's take $1,000 to spend this month on your bills, your discretionary spending, your meals, whatever. Every category, you take an envelope and you write the category's name on, and then you take that $1,000 and you just put, $200 in for groceries, $300 in for bills. You just go down every envelope and try to allocate. And then once you get to the end, you'll realize that you didn't, put enough, you didn't save enough for the last few. So you'll move some around to the other envelopes, and you'll get to a place where you're comfortable with, okay, I think I've allocated my money into my categories however I want. The reason I like this system is very tangible, right? Whether you do it in like, physical money in physical envelopes, or you can do it digitally, the same concept, but it's very tangible, and it takes money that you actually have and it allocates it into things that you want to spend. And the other thing that this system does is it teaches you how to roll with the punches. Say you put $200 in for eating, right? Whether that's groceries or eating out, but you get to day 20 of the month and you're out of money, right? That $200 is done. That right there tells you your system has proven to you that you need more than $200, and where is that going to come from? Instead of charging it on a credit card, charging it on, taking out money that you don't actually have physically, you're going to reach into another envelope that's maybe more discretionary, more optional, and you say, okay, I need $100 more bucks from this category, and I'm going to move it into my eating category, right? My food category. And so that really teaches you how to roll with the punches. And it also teaches you that a budget is not restrictive. It's the total opposite of restriction. It is free form. It's living, right? It's a reflection of reality, but it's bringing your finances in alignment with your reality.
I like that. I like the key there being you're only spending money that you have, not estimating what your income is going to be for the rest of the month and allocating that out. That could be helpful as a starting place, but the envelope system is really, I have $100 to eat out with. That's all I have. If I want to eat out more, I have to pull it from somewhere else, and it's more realistic to, like you said, your reality.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have struggled with budgeting apps or budgeting sites that don't, aren't built on that foundation of like the envelope system, because, like you said, like you're estimating your income, or you're saying like you're putting in random numbers for each category. You're saying, I want to spend $500 on eating out this month, and you're just inputting that on the app or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if you total all your categories, you just put random numbers. That's more money than you make in a month.
Sure.
Like, where's that money coming from? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not based in reality. It's not based in something tangible. So it just doesn't make sense. A lot of times it doesn't end up with a great outcome that I've seen for myself, and I've seen other people struggle with those types of budgeting apps. But a few good budgeting apps that I would probably recommend, what I use personally is YNAB. It's called You Need a Budget, YNAB for short. And then there's Every Dollar. That's like, I think that's from the Dave Ramsey. Like that's what his whole company has put out, the Dave Ramsey method of budgeting. And then if you want to use like just Google spreadsheets or Excel, there's a add-in called Tiller Money that like actually imports your bank transactions, which is really useful. You can either do it manually yourself, or you can pay for a service like Tiller to put in all your transactions where you can categorize and stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah, I would say, and to kind of go off that, I would say that's probably a great place to start as the action point. So I would say to the listeners is, we've talked about a lot today. We've covered a lot of different subjects. And if budgeting is new to you, it may be overwhelming. And so what I would say, what you can do this week to start making steps in the right direction in terms of budgeting is by starting to identify and categorize your expenses. And from there, you'll be able to get a grid for what you have, where your money's going each month, and the income that you have, how it's allocated. And it's going to be based in reality, not based in what you want it to look like. It gives you a realistic picture of where are you spending your money.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I love getting to talk about budgeting because it's something I'm truly passionate about. It's just such a cornerstone to healthy personal finance. Yeah. I've seen every time that I am in my budget and, constantly adjusting and keeping up with it, my personal finance, it's just sound, right? Yeah. It's peaceful. I'm not too stressed about it. But as soon as I step away, a couple months in, it's chaotic, and I'm spending way too much money on things I don't need. But yeah, love getting to talk about that with you. Well, that's our show. I'm Jeff James, and this is Baxter Robb, and we are potentially successful.